Hello, it's Monday, April 6th. This is the Monday of Holy Week, the week before Easter. And I'm coming to you today bringing a little devotional moment from the Gospel of Mark. Yesterday was Palm Sunday, and so we talked about how Jesus came into Jerusalem and was welcomed. And on the day after Palm Sunday, Mark says, that on the next day they had come back into Jerusalem, and on reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple area and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, "Is it not written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." Jesus cleared the temple of the merchant uses it was being put to, and he really drove to the heart of the issue that by turning the temple into a place of commerce, they had turned it from being a place that focused on God to being a place that focused on profit, and particularly on the phrase den of robbers suggests more than just innocent commerce. But at the same time, the essential problem was that they were using the temple as a place to make money instead of just as a place of worship for which it was designed. And there are a couple things that we can take as we think about this passage. One is that worship is not about some other gain we might have from it. Worship is ultimately about the God whom we are worshiping. You sometimes encounter people who want to make worship about us. And that sounds strange, and you may think, well, I haven't seen that. But I remember seeing uh, a video from a few years ago. It was a worship service, I think, at Lakewood, uh, that huge church. I think it's the biggest church in America, or one of the biggest at least, where the prosperity gospel preacher Joel Osteen preaches, and his wife, I think Victoria Osteen, was standing up and was talking about worship or prayer or whatnot, and how you're not really doing it for God, you're doing it for yourself, and you should do it to be good for yourself. Which the video of it was rightly criticized by others because it turned things on its head. We do benefit from worship. Worship is, of course, good for you, and it's good for you because it's what you were made for. But that's not why we do it. Our worship is to be directed to God, and that is an important point. But of course, Jesus wasn't working with something so abstract as worship in general. Jesus was dealing with the temple, the place that had been established by God as the meeting place between God and man. The temple was designated to be a place of prayer and also a place of sacrifice, a place where people would come and get right with God through the means He'd prescribed. And the interesting thing, of course, as we think about Holy Week, we think about upcoming Good Friday and Easter, is that Jesus Himself was really what the temple pointed towards. So many things in the Old Testament were symbolic of something bigger than themselves. The sacrifices were symbolic of the sacrifice that Jesus would make on the cross. The priesthood was symbolic of Jesus' true role as priest and mediator. And the temple itself was symbolic of Jesus. It carried on its role at the given time, and Jesus clearly cared about the sacredness of the temple because of the role that God had given it as a house of prayer. But the temple itself was becoming obsolete, and that's something that the story of Easter profoundly reminds us of, especially when it comes to the crucifixion, and we'll touch on that later this week on Good Friday. But the temple pointed to Jesus, the meeting place of God and man. And as Jesus purified the temple, even so, he was coming to be the true temple, the true mediator between God and man, the place where we can meet God and be right with God. And so, when we have a story here that reminds us of the cleansing of the temple, we now stand so much later in history and we know that the temple was destroyed, and that's okay because by the time it was destroyed, it had served its purpose. It was obsolete. And our temple, Jesus Christ, died and rose again to bring us life. And because he lives and reigns forever, we can pray, we can meet with God, we can be right with God because our meeting place with God stands secure in heaven. There's a thought for your Monday. I hope that as you launch into this holy week that you're doing well, that you stay safe, be careful, and also remember to take this time as a special time of prayer and devotion and drawing close to God as we celebrate the wonder of the cross and the mystery of Easter. God be with you all.